Listen to my words, O Lord, consider my lament. I cry out for help, my King, my heart is spent. In the stillness of the dawn, I seek your guiding hand. Mornings are the moments where my soul can truly live. Hear my plea, O gracious Lord, my spirit feels undone. In the quiet of the morning, I pray until the sun. For you, O Lord, my voice I raise in hope and true belief. In the early light of day, you bring my soul relief. In the morning, you hear me. In the morning, I plead. I lay my requests before you, where my spirit longs to be. With every rising dawn, I seek your loving grace. In the morning, I'll find comfort in the glow of your embrace. Oh Lord, you are my refuge, my shelter in the storm. In the quiet breaks of dawn, your presence keeps me warm. Every morning light reveals the paths I need to take. Beside your guiding wisdom, I shall never break. Hear my cry for help, my King, my God in whom I trust. Within the morning silence, I know that you are just. Tracing all my thoughts and dreams, you guide my every move. In the early whispers, your affections prove. In the morning hours, I find your voice so clear. In the still of dawn, I know that you are near. My life unfolds before you with every waking breath. In the morning light, I feel your love and depth. In the morning hours, I find your voice so clear. In the still of dawn, I know that you are near. My life unfolds before you with every waking breath. In the morning light, I feel your love and depth. Listen to my words, O Lord, consider my lament. I cry out for help, my King, my heart is spent. In the stillness of the dawn, I seek your guiding hand. Mornings are the moments where my soul can truly land. Hear my plea, O gracious Lord, my spirit feels undone. In the quiet of the morning, I pray until the sun. For you, O Lord, my voice I raise in hope and true belief. In the early light of day, you bring my soul relief. In the morning you hear me, in the morning I plead. I lay my request before you, where my spirit longs to be. With every rising dawn, I seek your loving grace. In the morning, I'll find comfort in the glow of your embrace. Oh Lord, you are my refuge, my shelter in the storm. In the quiet breaks of dawning, your presence keeps me warm. Every morning light reveals the paths I need to take. Beside your guiding wisdom, I shall never break. Hear my plea, O gracious Lord, my spirit feels undone. In the quiet of the morning, I pray until the sun. For you, O Lord, my voice I raise in hope and true belief. In the early light of day, you bring my soul relief. In the morning you hear me, in the morning I plead. I lay my request before you where my spirit longs to be. With every rising dawn I seek your loving grace. In the morning light I feel your love and death. In the morning hours I find your voice so clear. In the still of dawn I know that you are near. My life unfolds before you with every waking breath. In the morning light I feel your love.
All right, so we're diving deep today, and I'm excited about this one. It's Psalm 5.
Oh yeah, this is a good one. A lot of emotion packed into these few verses.
Yeah, it's attributed to King David, right? Like so many of the Psalms are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, the book of Psalms, it's his collection of ancient Hebrew poems and hymns, and they express such a range of human emotions and experiences.
Right, and all in relation to God. It's like this beautiful tapestry of faith and doubt and joy and sorrow all kind of woven together.
Yeah, exactly. And in Psalm 5, it feels like we're getting this like really raw, unfiltered glimpse into David's heart. Like he's wrestling with some pretty intense stuff. Fears, anxieties, the whole 9 yards.
Absolutely. I mean, right from the start, you get this sense of urgency. It's a cry for help, a plea for divine intervention.
And that's one of the things that really struck me about this song. We have this inscription for the director of music for pipes. So it's implying that this deeply personal, raw outpouring of emotion was potentially meant to be sung, like in public worship,
Imagine that. Imagine being in that ancient Israelite congregation and hearing those words sung aloud.
It's powerful, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like this collective experience of vulnerability, a shared recognition of human frailty and need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not exactly your typical Sunday morning hymn, like there's a rawness and honesty to it that's really striking.
Totally. David doesn't sugarcoat anything. He comes right out and says, give ear to my words, Lord. Consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For unto thee will I pray.
Wow. It's like he's laying it all out there. No pretense, no holding back. Just pure, raw emotion poured out before God. Exactly.
And I think there's something really beautiful about that. It's a reminder that, we can come to God just as we are. We don't have to pretend to have it all together.
But there's this other aspect to the psalm that I found myself kind of wrestling with. It's where David calls on God to punish his enemies. Like, destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee.
Right. Yeah, that's a challenging part for sure. For a lot of people, it can feel kind of jarring, especially when we think about God as being loving and merciful.
I was like, how does that fit with this image of a God who cares for all people?
Well, it's a question that theologians and scholars have been grappling with for centuries, really. There are a couple of ways to approach it. Some argue that it reflects the harsh realities of the ancient Near East. It was a very different world back then, a much more violent and tribal culture.
So it's like maybe David is speaking from within that cultural context.
Exactly. And his understanding of justice, may be influenced by that. But other scholars see these verses as more of a foreshadowing of God's ultimate judgment against evil. It's not about personal vengeance, but about God upholding righteousness and justice in the grand scheme of things.
I see. So there are different ways to interpret those verses.
Definitely. And ultimately, how we reconcile those different aspects, how we make sense of them in light of our own understanding of God, it's a very personal journey.
Yeah, I can see that. So, even though there's this darkness, this cry for vengeance, there's also this really powerful shift that happens in the psalm. Like David moves from this place of desperation and anger to something else entirely.
Oh, absolutely. There's this real progression in the psalm. It's like he starts out in the depths of despair, but then he remembers who God is.
And that seems to change everything, doesn't it?
It really does. He starts to focus on God's attributes, on God's character. He says, "For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity."
So he's reminding himself of God's holiness, God's hatred of evil.
Right. And that seems to give him a sense of hope, a sense of security.
I noticed that he uses some really striking imagery in this psalm, too.
Oh, yeah. The imagery is so vivid and powerful.
Like on one hand, you have this image of the open grave, the whispers of deceit, this feeling of being surrounded by enemies.
It's a picture of utter vulnerability and danger. You can almost feel the fear and anxiety that David is experiencing.
Yeah, and it's contrasted with this other image of taking refuge in God's presence. He talks about bowing down in God's temple, seeking protection and safety.
It's like he's saying, the world might be a terrifying place, but here, with God, I am safe.
And that's where the hope comes in, right? And those final verses, he talks about God protecting the righteous, surrounding them with favor like a shield.
But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield.
Beautiful.
It really is. And I think it speaks to this universal human longing for security and protection. Whether we face literal enemies or just the everyday anxieties of life, that image of God as a shield can be so incredibly comforting.
So you're saying this ancient poem, written thousands of years ago, can still speak to us today?
Absolutely. I think it's more relevant than ever, in a way.
But how? What does that look like?
Well, for one thing, I think it challenges us to be more honest with God. David models this incredible vulnerability, this willingness to bring his raw emotions to God.
So we don't have to pretend, we don't have to put on a brave face.
Right, exactly. We can bring our fears, our anger, our doubts, all of it to God.
And those contrasting images, the open grave versus finding refuge in God's presence, what do those mean for us today?
That's a great question. I think it invites us to consider, what are the open graves in our own lives? What are the things that threaten to swallow us up, to consume us with fear and anxiety?
And where do we find that refuge, that sense of safety and protection?
Maybe it's in prayer, maybe it's in community, maybe it's in spending time in nature or engaging in creative expression. I think it's different for everyone, but the psalm reminds us that no matter what we're facing, we don't have to face it alone.
That's a powerful thought. So our listeners out there wrestling with their own struggles, their own fears, anxieties, what do they do? Where do they find that refuge in the midst of all that chaos? What does it look like to trust in God's protection in a world that can often feel so unsafe?
Yeah.
Psalm 5 doesn't offer easy answers, but I think it gives us a framework for grappling with those questions.
Yeah.
It shows us the power of honest prayer, the importance of remembering who God is, and the possibility of finding hope even in the darkest of times.
It reminds us that we're not alone in those struggles. People have been wrestling with those same questions for millennia.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, by engaging with these ancient words, by letting them speak to our own hearts, we can find our own path to hope, our own experience of God's presence and protection.
I think so.
It's definitely something to think about.